guys, and welcome back to another video. So as you can tell, we are starting a new sketchbook today because Saturday I showed you guys the sketchbook tour of my previous sketchbook, which is kind of like the teal and peach peony sketchbook, or I guess notebook is a better way to put it. So yeah, these are notebooks. They are blank, they have no lines or dots. It does have fairly thin paper, so it is more akin to a notebook, but I'm treating it like a sketchbook because of the blank pages, and I can work in it pretty much with all the mediums that I like to use, with exceptions to like heavy painting and stuff. But yeah, we are working in my Epiphyllum's notebook, which is the one with the kind of like night vibes and kind of more like cooler colors. It has a little bit more like blues, purples, and green. And because we're starting a new sketchbook, I wanted to obviously paint kind of like the inside cover like I usually do. And previously I would do either like pencil crayons, we could have done graphite, I've done like fine liners, I've done watercolor for the inside cover, but more recently I liked using the gouache to do the inside cover just because it's a little bit more vibrant. I like the matte kind of texture to the painting. So yeah, let's talk about process for a little bit. So as you guys saw, I showed you guys the rough sketch, which is done with the Pilot Color ENO in the color red, but I did skip the sketching portion, both the red one and the pencil one that you guys see previously, before I showed you guys my palette. And the reason being is just because it's a little bit harder for me to sketch on camera if I'm not trying to be accurate, or the opposite. If I'm trying to be more accurate, I don't want to skew the sketch too much by having it placed fully horizontally on my desk. So apologies if you were looking forward to watching the sketching portion. So I'm going to be showing you guys mostly just the painting portion and adding details and everything to this one. So I am painting my OC Akemi. So if you guys watch the sketchbook tour, this is his official name, and yeah, this is how I'm going to be referring to him as for now. And I wanted to paint him because I think his color scheme kind of fits the colors that I wanted to use for the inside cover. I think so. The one where I was working in my peony sketchbook, I drew Maseki in more like formal attire, as well as drawing like peonies in the inside cover for both the front and the back. Now I wanted to also do one for this one where I'm gonna draw like the epiphyllums, but I decided to go against it because I didn't really want to take the time to paint a dark background to make these flowers really pop, because for the most part these flowers are actually supposed to be more like white. I've seen pictures of these flowers having more a little bit more of like translucent leaves so where like the colors could pop through, but it would require me to paint a lot more of the sketchbook to be a lot darker on the inside, and I wasn't sure if I could pull that off, so I decided to pick something a little bit easier for myself. So you can see that once I've laid down the watercolor washes, you can kind of see the premise of what I went for. So I'm kind of still doing kind of like moons and clouds and sticking with kind of the color palette that I had for the front cover. I have Akemi holding kind of a group of stars in his lap, and I just wanted him to be kind of like casually sitting. Now, when I planned out the sketch, I didn't really think about what I wanted the last page of the sketchbook to look like, which would be the other side's inside cover. But I would like them to kind of like reflect each other in a way, at least like theme wise or like aesthetic, because I did that with I think my previous Wonu sketchbook, where I drew like gamer Wonu, and then the other one is Maseki, where I had him with the peonies and the formal outfit for the both inside front cover and the inside of the back cover. So we'll see what I can do for the Akemi one. I have an idea now, but I'll save that till like maybe if I do like a planning session, or hopefully I'll remember it for the final page. We'll see. But yeah, I wanted to match the inside cover to the front cover just because I think aesthetically it would be nice for it to like kind of like continue, but I did not do flowers for this one, so apologies if people were excited to see me paint flowers. I just didn't feel confident enough to paint these kinds of flowers. I think they're called also like night lilies, I believe, night blooming lilies. So if you like to search it up, you can see how really pretty they are. And I don't think I can do them justice if I don't technically put them against a really dark background to have that contrast. So we're going a little bit more simple. And yeah, process wise, I decided to paint the sketch with watercolor, and I've gotten questions on why I do so, and it's kind of mainly for two reasons. One, which is a very, I guess like the simple answer, is that it's easy for me to plan out colors. It's just really quick and fast, and a lot of the pigments and stuff are transparent when using it, so it's easier for me to plan out colors really simple without losing the lines of like my graphite or like my sketch and stuff. The other reason is actually because you can kind of see it where I've placed the watercolor. It doesn't adhere in the same way, and it's very patchy on this kind of paper. So the front cover of the sketchbook has kind of like a more cream colored paper, which feels more like manila, while the rest of the pages are more of a slightly off-white. It is a little bit warmer than previous sketchbooks that I've used, but the front page that I'm working on and the inside cover does have more of a like manila texture. It's a lot thicker, a little bit more warmer, and has a color. But because of this texture, I think it really doesn't really like have anywhere for the paint to adhere to. But once I place down the watercolor, the gouache actually is able to kind of like cling on to this rough texture that the watercolor creates, so it makes it a little bit easier for the paint to adhere to. So that's kind of like my reasonings for why I do this method. And yeah, it's just more comfortable for me to paint this way. I feel much more comfortable painting with watercolor, so it was a little bit easier for me to plan the colors beforehand, before jumping in with gouache, because I still feel very rusty using gouache, but plus, I don't know, the way I handle gouache is still, at least to me, it's not really ideal. I have the urge to always want to blend, but I also feel like my style benefits if I can play around with a little bit more bolder and high contrast, because I think cell shading looks okay in my style too, because I draw mostly like anime style characters, so it kind of fits a little bit better. But for the thing I wanted to do for his shirt, you'll see me struggle a little bit when I'm painting it, is that his turtleneck is kind of like a dark navy blue, almost bordering like the color black, but I needed the stars to kind of reflect off of the surface as well, just because they are glowing. So having it done with cell shading would have been a little bit more difficult, because how I imagine Akemi's shirt to be is a little bit more like form-fitting, so it's less wrinkles, even though like I think if you're sitting it'll definitely wrinkle up towards the bottom anyways, so I could have done that, but it was hard for me to express the stars glowing with having like harsh edges where the light is hitting the sweater, if that makes sense. I'm realizing, I don't know if I was just underprepared for speaking today or if I'm just extremely tired, but a lot of the things I'm probably saying either doesn't make sense, or I'm like slurring my words or like mixing up my sentences, so apologies about that. But yeah, painting his hair was actually quite fun for me. I was able to kind of pick and choose what colors I wanted to use for his hair, because if I lean it too navy, I know a lot of people think he looks like Xingqiu. That is not my intention. There is another character in Tears of Themis where I like his hair. I think his name is it Vincent or is it Victor? I don't really remember, but he's like Marius's assistant or something like that, and he has a kind of more of a choppy banged look. And I also like Ignatz from Fire Emblem, so yeah, I always like choppy hair for some reason on boys. I think it still looks kind of like cute and a little bit derpy in a sense, because most likely people don't really cut their hair like that often. But yeah, I know I don't want to lean it to navy blue or like that turquoisey blue, just because it does resemble Xingqiu a little bit too much. So I wanted to push his hair more towards like gray and green a little bit, just because I think it suits him a little bit better, and in previous sketches in my other sketchbook, that's how I painted it. Also, For the stars, so I did manage to kind of blotch in some kind of gradient between the glowing part and his sweater, just very roughly. I'm using a bit of different brushes lately just because I think I mentioned this in a previous video that I was struggling doing gouache because I feel like I was rushing how I was painting and I was just really struggling with it. But I think something that helps is changing the brushes. I'm very lazy when it comes to painting, so I like to use one brush for everything, and I think that's backfiring for me doing gouache recently because I think I need to slow down. I need to maybe use smaller brushes, thinner brushes, so I won't be tempted to randomly block things in such a way that I think it's like good enough. But usually for me it means that it's probably quite messy and that I was too lazy to finish it. So for the Akemi's outfit and his hair, I did take my time and use a small brush pretty much for all of it. Later on, I decided to switch back to the normal brush that I used to do the background because I like using a little bit more of a blunt round brush for more painterly stuff. So hopefully that works out. I did struggle with the clouds on the back, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I had a lot of fun actually doing his stripes on his shirt as well. So for Akemi's outfit, I have him wearing kind of like a turtleneck. Now, I haven't really decided what the turtleneck looks like underneath the dress shirt. So his shirt is kind of just a normal dress shirt, plain white, but then he has gray and orange. I decided to kind of keep his color palette quite simple. So his hair and his shirt and pants kind of are more cooler toned. His shirt's more of a neutral tone of just plain white and usually a neutral gray, and I decided to add a little bit more of like orange because his eye color is a little bit more of an orangey yellow, so just having that reflect each other. I might give him a little bit more orange, like an orange belt or something, so he can have a little bit more of orange in his color scheme. So for the most part, when I'm going to be drawing his siblings and planning out their color schemes, I do want it to reflect kind of this navy blue, either red or orange combination, or yellow. So yeah, I think his is the easiest for me. I want to lean the older brother kind of with like darker version for hair color, and then I think the same with the younger one. So I kind of want the younger sibling and Akemi's older brother to kind of have similar aesthetic, but I'm probably going to play around with the ratio of their color schemes so that they don't resemble each other too much. Pants, because they were black, I decided to paint it pretty much all black, and I decided to pull out the highlights by adding kind of like a muted blue, and a little bit later I'm going to pull out the blues a little bit more because I kind of wanted it to have a little bit of like reflected light from the background. I didn't do it too well because I was a little scared to lose the form of his pants. Okay, so background colors. I wasn't actually that happy with this color that I chose for the clouds. I did want it to go from light to dark, so light from the back and then dark as we move forward, just because I have the moon in the back as well, so I wanted it to look like it's coming from there. I didn't do the lighting too well, so maybe in a future piece I would do a similar concept like this, but maybe I'll do it digitally so I can get the vibe and the aesthetic to look correctly, because I would have liked if I also didn't paint the moon in completely and I left it more white, because I wanted to look like it was going to be more illuminating, but at this point it looks like it's kind of just sitting. So you can kind of see that when I was painting. So using these small, I was using a flat brush. I was having a hard time trying to figure out how I wanted to paint the clouds. I know how to paint clouds okay digitally in a more like natural looking way. But the way I was doing this, I thought I was going to do more of a stylized cloud painting way that I've done for like my chibi illustrations in the past. But I decided that it looked a little too off. So I decided to paint in a little bit more. I feel like it's a little bit looser. It's a little bit more playing with the shapes rather than having these weird like little round humps going in the background. So I think it looks a little bit better. Once I add a little bit of the darker, I'm going to try my best to kind of transition the foreground and the background colors together. I think there's still a little bit of a split in between, but I think it looks okay for the most part. I also painted the moon like a stark white to the best of my ability, and I feel like I should have left it like this. Like I said, after I added in some shadows, it kind of blends in too much with the background, so yeah. But you can tell now that the page I'm working on, or like the little spread, is more of a manila color, and it kind of helped a little bit with his skin tone, so I don't have to worry about it looking too patchy, but it also helped with making the clouds and the moon kind of stand out, because I could use a more of a bright white to stand out on this kind of like cream colored background. And yeah, for the most part, clouds, treated them a little bit more loosely. I don't really, I feel like I don't really fare well with doing stuff that's very loose. I'm very much like control, kind of keeping things neat. I like keeping things a little bit more like separated if I can, just because I don't know if it's because I like having a process and then being able to see things separate and stuff, but when I paint loosely, I feel like it's good for the energy, but for me, I can't execute it well, and it might be because of my rigidness when it comes to drawing sometimes. So yeah, I would like to improve on that in the future. Okay, one thing I want to talk about before the video ends is that I wanted to have goals for the sketchbook. And I think it's important to have goals in a sketchbook, but make sure the goals are tailored to yourself and that they're goals that are kind of like fun a little bit. Yeah, I want them to be enjoyable, I guess. So for me, I did mention this, but I wanted to do a little bit more like floral studies, and I wanted to do more painting in the sketchbook because those are things I kind of avoided for some reason. Floral studies, I think, is just because I was lazy. Painting is because I'm scared to use the paper and having it warp so much, because I love using graphite and dry medium in the sketchbook, but yeah, it doesn't handle water that well, so it does buckle a lot. But for the most part, I think I want to do more studies if I can, mostly like flower studies. I want to draw my OCs a little bit more, and I do want to play with poses more as well, and probably paint more. So for the last few touches of this drawing is actually doing stars. So I wanted to try my best to mimic the colors that are on the front cover. So the colors I chose for the stars are mostly, I guess it doesn't really show up here. I tried to pick a pale green, a pale purple, and a pale yellow because they do appear in the sketchbook. And obviously I have enough blue going on, so I only did a few blue stars as well. I added some white stars, and yeah, I just kind of like sprinkled them all over, and then I noticed that I don't know, there's something missing, and I know this won't really matter in the recording because you guys can't see the sketchbook in person. So actually, after I paint all these little stars, I wanted to add some into kind of like the upper area, like right here, but I thought it'd be fun to add some that are a little bit more hard to see unless it's under a specific lighting condition, which means I wanted to actually use some metallic colors. And I have this metallic set for a while. I've actually had an older one that I gave away to a friend because she wanted one, but she didn't want to buy like a new set, and I already bought a new set, so she said that if I could send her my old set, that'd be great. So I did do that, and I added a few metallic stars here and there. I also added it to his glasses and his eyes, and hopefully it'll show up on camera when I tilt it, but I think it looks kind of cool that his glasses has a little bit of a reflection. Added a little bit to the strip of his earring, a few here and there, and then I'll add kind of a pale gold to the ones in the upper portion where there's no paint, because I think it's kind of fun and neat that you can see the stars more easily if you can see it under a specific lighting condition, but for the most part you can't really see them that well because they kind of blend into the background. I just thought it looked cute. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video though, and my little rambliness, and hopefully I'll be recording a lot more for the sketchbook doodle series that I can kind of change up with the mediums I've been using and stuff. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!